This analysis applies the grammar of games framework developed by Forrest to a move, throw, and catch activity observed in a tertiary practical setting. The grammar of games provides a conceptual language for understanding how meaning in play emerges through the dynamic interaction of core concepts, decision-making, strategy and tactics, movement, skill, and communication and concentration. The model reframes performance from isolated technique to the interpretation and coordination of game grammar, where players read the play, adapt with constraints, and regulate their actions in response to the evolving game conditions. It enables analysis of how individuals and teams construct and refine knowledge maps in real time, as primary and action rules, effective play space, and opposition dynamics shape decision-making, strategy and tactics, movement, skill, and communication and concentration. In this presentation, the analysis will highlight how players' tactical choices and movement behaviours in move, throw and catch reflect these interdependent concepts. The discussion also considers how sub-concepts such as force ratio, knowledge map and competency network contribute to the development of game literacy and the transfer of learning across other game categories. The primary rules of move, throw and catch game establish the structural grammar through which play occurs. Each team consists of 3 players, with a net acting as the central spatial constraint that divides the effective play space. The ball used is a volleyball, supporting overhead passing and controlled trajectory. Players must throw the ball in the same direction it is caught, which limits lateral play and demands anticipation of spatial flow. To complete a legal attacking action, the player must land in front of the blue line and release the ball overhead to the opposing court. This directional and landing constraint defines the primary affordances of play, the spaces that can and cannot be used, and in doing so, shapes decision-making and force ratio. Only one player may remain on the court after the initial catch. All other players must exit the front of the court and re-enter from behind the yellow line. Re-entry can only occur once the ball has left the thrower's hands. Early entry constitutes a turnover. These movement rules encourage rotation, timing awareness, and collective strategy, as players must coordinate exit and entry to maintain spatial coverage. Turnovers occur when a rule is broken, such as early re-entry, net contact, or directional error, which reinforces precision and self-regulation rather than scoring. In this way, the rule system positions the game as a constraint-based learning environment where meaning in play develops through interaction, adjustment, and understanding of the game's internal logic. Decision-making is the foundation of the grammar of games. In move, throw and catch, players continually interpret emerging cues with a dynamic, continuous play environment. Each reception immediately creates a new decision point, whether to advance towards the blue line, retreat to recover coverage, or reposition for re-entry. Because the ball must be thrown in the same direction it is caught, decision-making is influenced by spatial orientation and effective play space. Players must anticipate the likely flight pattern and landing zone of both the ball and their teammates. This rule constraint reduces decision quantity but increases decision quality, requiring perceptual accuracy, reading of body cues, and anticipation of the next pass. In continuous play, decisions are also relational. One player's choice to accelerate toward the net immediately alters the tactical options of others. The attacking team must interpret how the defending formation shifts, while defenders decide when to press forward or to remain deep to protect coverage. Through repeated rallies, players construct knowledge maps that support faster, more automated responses. Over time, these accumulated experiences refine collective decision-making, linking tactical recognition to movement execution and communication. Strategy and tactics represent the organized responses players use to solve the problems created by the game's constraints. In move, throw and catch, players develop tactical coherence through positional adjustment, rotation, and coordinated occupation of effective play space. The attacking team's tactical intent is to maintain flow and open space ahead of the blue line. Because the throw must follow the direction of the catch, the attack unfolds as a forward progression rather than a lateral pattern. This shapes the team's collective strategy. Players anticipate the landing zone and move to occupy complementary positions behind the catcher. Defensively, a 2-to-1 structure is evident, with 2 front players covering near court zones and a rear player reading depth. The back player tracks the thrower's body alignment to predict ball trajectory and initiate counter movement. This demonstrates the ability to read visual information and adjust spatial coverage dynamically. As rallies progress, teams refine how they manipulate force ratio, the relationship between height, distance, and speed, to send the ball into spaces that stretch defensive positions. Over successive plays, this awareness contributes to the development of a shared knowledge map, enabling teams to anticipate recurring patterns and coordinate movement without explicit communication. Ultimately, strategy and tactics are expressed not as pre-planned plays, but as adaptive, context-sensitive behaviors that emerge through interaction between players, space, and rule constraints. Movement skill represents the embodied execution of technical actions within the game's structural constraints. In move, throw, and catch, movement skill is not defined by uniform technique, but by the capacity of each player to adjust body control, timing, and power relative to their own physical ability. When advancing towards the blue line, some players generate lift and momentum through a 1-foot jump, while others maintain a grounded step-through release. These variations illustrate the competency network, different motor solutions that still achieve the same tactical objective. The net and blue line constraint require players to coordinate force ratio, balancing vertical and horizontal forces, to send the ball high enough to clear the obstacle, yet controlled enough to land within the opposing effective play space. Through repetition, players refine kinesthetic awareness and rhythm, aligning their movement pattern with tactical intent. This integration of physical execution and strategic purpose demonstrates how movement skill supports the other grammatical elements: precise decisions, tactical flow, and coordinated communication. Communication and concentration form the connective grammar that links tactical intent with collective execution. In move, throw, and catch, communication occurs primarily through visual and positional cues rather than verbal instruction. As players rotate on and off the court, they rely on mutual awareness of body orientation, landing zones, and eye contact to determine who will receive the next pass. Because only one player may remain on the court after the initial catch, off-court teammates must sustain concentration on both the ball trajectory and the timing of the release. Entering too early breaks the rule set, while delayed entry reduces team cohesion. This timing dependency illustrates how communication and concentration interact as players synchronize movement and decision cycles. Effective teams exhibit implicit communication, small adjustments of stance or hand position signaling readiness, a shared attentional focus, where all players track the same environmental cues. These behaviours reinforce collective strategy, ensuring seamless transitions between attack and defence within the game's continuous rhythm. Over time, this attentional coupling builds team knowledge maps that reduce the cognitive load of real-time decision-making. Concentration, therefore, operates not only as an individual focus, but as a distributed system of shared perception that sustains meaningful play. The grammar of games emphasizes that these concepts operate interdependently. Meaning in play arises from their continual interaction rather than from any single component. In move, throw, and catch, decision-making, strategy and tactics, movement skill, and communication and concentration are expressed simultaneously with each phase of play. For example, a player's decision to advance towards the blue line is influenced by their perception of open effective play space and their teammates' communication cue. That decision is executed through movement skill and shaped by the team's tactical structure. These interactions form a feedback loop. The outcome of each action informs the next decision, gradually refining the team's knowledge map. Over multiple rallies, players begin to recognize recurring movement patterns, predicting likely responses and adjusting positioning preemptively. The force ratio present in each throw, balancing height, speed, and distance, connects physical execution to tactical intent. As teams manipulate these ratios, they learn how Energy application alters spatial opportunity, directly linking movement skill to strategic understanding. The flow of this game demonstrates how communication, physical execution, and decision-making merge to create a coherent game grammar. Each component underpins and reinforces the other, generating both individual competence and collective cohesion within the game's dynamic constraints. The sub-concepts of the grammar of games deepen understanding of how players integrate cognition, coordination, and context within play. Force ratio describes how players regulate the relationship between height, distance, and speed to manipulate the flight of the ball and alter defensive positioning. In move, throw, and catch, this is evident when players vary their release angle or apply greater force to send the ball into unguarded zones. Managing this ratio requires perceptual judgment and kinesthetic control, linking movement skill directly to strategic execution. The knowledge map represents each player's evolving understanding of spatial patterns, teammates' tendencies, and the game's temporal rhythm. As rallies progress, players refine these maps, allowing them to predict opponent behavior and position themselves more efficiently within the effective play space. This growing awareness demonstrates transfer of learning, recognizing how knowledge built here can inform play in other net wall, court, or invasion contexts. The competency network reflects how perceptual, cognitive, and physical capabilities interconnect to enable flexible responses. Differences in players' throw mechanics and timing illustrate how multiple competencies combine to achieve the same tactical intent. This demonstrates that effective performances relies not only on replicating a single technique, but on coordinating an adaptable network of capabilities within constraint. The analysis of move, throw, and catch through the grammar of games framework demonstrates how meaning and play is constructed through the continual interaction of decision-making, strategy and tactics, movement skill, and communication and concentration. With the defined primary and action rules, players navigate, constraint, coordinate actions, and adapt in real time. This process reflects the game's internal logic, a system in which perception, cognition, and movement combine to create coherent play. The integration of force ratio, knowledge map, and competency network further reveals how performance is both physical and cognitive. As players manipulate energy, interpret spatial cues, and draw upon prior experiences, they demonstrate an evolving understanding of game grammar that transcends this single context. From a pedagogical perspective, the grammar of games positions games as learning environments rather than testing grounds for skills. By analysing play through this lens, teachers and students can emphasise tactical awareness, problem solving, and transfer of learning across categories. For example, recognising how spatial awareness in this net wall court context supports decision-making in invasion games. Ultimately, move, throw, and catch illustrates that effective participation in games relies on the synthesis of conceptual understanding, technical capability, and the interpersonal coordination. The grammar of games offers the framework to observe, interpret, and teach these interactions with depth, coherence, and purpose.